And we are live. Good morning, everyone, and good morning, Profesor. Buenos días, Profesor Eduardo Bhatia Gautier.
Buenos
This
dias,
is
Jorge. Great to be with you. Always a great pleasure to see you. A great pleasure to hear from such a distinguished professor at CUNY. So thank you for having me.
no, it's our pleasure, and thank you for taking the time. I know you are serving as a visiting professor at Princeton University, so a very busy man, former president of the Senate in Puerto Rico, and many other important positions within the government of Puerto Rico and also in the public sector and in the private sector as well. So we want to start, first of all, by recognizing that this is Hispanic Heritage Month. So we want to congratulate you, Eduardo, as a Hispanic who has climbed several very, very important positions, and for the opportunity to share with our students a little bit of your story, a little bit of your path towards where you are today. In particular, this is one of a series of interviews we will be conducting for the benefit of the CUNY School of Professional Studies students who are considering a career in the public sector. So
Wonderful.
some of what we will talk about is how you looked at the public sector as a career path, your personal story in terms of how you got there, what recommendations you might have for our students. But before we get started the questions, I do want to tell you a little bit about SPS. The School of Professional Studies is one of 25 colleges and schools within the CUNY system. CUNY is the City University of New York, has almost 500,000 students in total, including degree seeking and non degree seeking students. Now, the School of Professional Studies was created for the specific purpose of serving adults who wanted to pursue a career but needed the flexibility because either they work or they have family obligations. So we started by developing an online school way before online was fashionable. 15 years ago, we launched our first online degree. Today, we have 28 degrees between master's and bachelor degrees and over 4,000 students. So a real successful story within CUNY, as you know, with the quality of that prestigious institution and also with the affordability of city-run university. So with that context and thinking of the audience as our students who are primarily, as I said, working adults who are pursuing either a bachelor's or master's, I'd like to hear a little bit about your story, Eduardo. If you can tell us about how you got to where you are, and what recommendations you might have for our students. So let's start with your background. Can you tell us how you chose a career and why you chose a career in the public sector?
Well, first of all, let me join my voice in saying congratulations on Hispanic Heritage Month. I think more than congratulating folks, I think it's a month to inspire each other, to make sure that Hispanics all over the United States take opportunity of this month to actually become stronger and better, more educated. And I think SPS is just the right venue for many who have no other or are looking for alternatives and ways to get it. So thank you for leading SPS. Thank you for educating so many people right now. And thank you for being at the forefront of future leaders of the United States. I have devoted about 30 years in public service. Public service is great. It's a great, I would say, a professional decision. It's a lifestyle. In many ways, it's for me. It was a decision that I made early on in my life after I finished. While I was in college, and then I am a lawyer, so I went to law school. And I always thought of something that may sound corny, but it really means something, and it's called the common good, el bien común. How do we work around that concept, and how do we define el bien común? How do we think of using one's professional life to see if you can actually help others? It doesn't have to be just on government, but mostly, governments are supposed to be there to try to create that, space and of inclusion, and where, something called the common good should come out of any public servant. So governments do need workers, do need pioneers, do need leaders, do need analysts, do need translators, do need statisticians, and all, you can have a wide array of jobs that governments can actually do.
And let me tell you, for the benefit of the audience, you could have chosen so many different careers. You're a very accomplished professional, Princeton alum. So you did your bachelor's at Princeton, and then did a Fulbright fellowship in Chile, if I recall correctly, and then went on to Stanford School of Law. So one of the best pedigrees nationwide and worldwide, I would say. But you decided to pursue that common good. So for those of our students who are also contemplating that career, do you have any particular recommendations as you start thinking about careers in public sector? And that could be in politics, that could be in government, and you probably have some recommendations in terms of what would you, if you were a student today, if you were doing your bachelor's degree at this point in your life, what would you look for as opportunities for growth?
Let me just say this from the very beginning. And thank you for your words. I would say there's one rule that I have always tried to follow. I'm not saying I always was successful at that, but the main rule is fall in love. If you fall in love with a cause, what is it that you want to do? What is it you want to accomplish? Don't fall in love with a position. Don't fall in love with being Secretary of Education of the state of Massachusetts or the state of Connecticut. Fall in love with being a great designer, architect, someone who can actually build a good education system. So it's more, I think, thinking about when you think about yourself, think of what is it, think of what are the causes that actually trigger happiness in you, trigger a desire in terms of a passion. I mean, what is your professional passion in terms of, and for some people it could be, protecting the environment. And if that is your passion, follow your passion, follow that leads in that direction. And folks who are protecting the environment need to know about finance, and need to know about law, and need to know about economics, and need to know about politics. So, but the main, I think, thought I would share is just really follow your passion. And I know it sounds, perhaps too general, but think about it, and think about what is it that drives you if you want to join the public service.
So I on that regard, I see two common themes and I have known you for many years, two common themes that you have pursued your entire life. And I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how and why you chose those two. Number one is, as you mentioned, education. You have been, when you were president of the Senate, you looked at reforming the public educational system in Puerto Rico. Also, the second theme that is, and still to this day, I believe you're teaching a class of students at Princeton who are looking into the topic of environmental and climate change, and how can we do better in the energy generation sector. So can you talk a little bit about how those dots linked throughout your life? Because I think those are two primary topics that you have covered throughout your public life.
Jorge, you would be surprised to hear that even though those are the main subjects I have worked on, what really drives me is that, and what really bothers me is so many folks, so many people in areas of poverty that have no opportunity. So basically, what if I'm looking for that sort of thing that is what I think about every morning, is really how many folks out there could be very successful if they had a chance, if they had an opportunity. So then the question for me was, how do you actually open those doors? And of course, the mechanism to get there, the train to get there, is education. It's really education. How do you reform the education system so that folks and kids have a better opportunity? They can actually, I mean, there are kids who were born and they're on third base, but there are so many kids who have not even been invited to the baseball field. And I think it's important that part of what we want to do is make sure that kids are offered an education that it's a quality education. And for that, I think so many times you have to actually face reality, and you have to deal with labor unions. You have to deal with, parents. You have to deal with school boards and laws that are archaic. Just think of SPS and how many things you have been able to do at SPS doing non-traditional university education. And when you bring that about at the elementary and secondary school systems, there's always a pushback. And people are saying always, perhaps we should not do it this way because it threatens my job, some people think. And change comes about, change needs actors of change, needs someone. And that's another issue I would actually raise is if you want to be in the public sector, be willing to fight and, be ready to have a good fight and be ready to, push your ideas, because you will get pushbacks many times. And I think that's normal. That's part of, the process of governance anywhere. But be willing to do it. So I would say what really drives me is trying to see, and I'm not saying I have accomplished it, but trying to see how, through renewable energy and more affordable energy, we can make families live better lives, poor families, in what we call energy justice. And then on the education piece, how can we make more kids ready to go into eventually to high school and then eventually to college? If we can increase the numbers and we can make them better prepared, I think we will have a better society.
So thank you for that answer, and it leads me to a quick analysis on your answer as to the distinction of the purpose, the reason why you chose that theme. I'll explain myself. Climate change could have been your ultimate goal in terms of looking at renewable energy, and I'm not saying that is not an important topic for you, but it seems that your ultimate goal, as we look at renewables and renewable energy, was to provide social justice, was to provide to the most needed segments of the population a viable option to generate energy and electricity so that they could achieve their goals in life and go forward in terms of their careers and progress in their careers. Same with the educational piece. So it seems to me that your goals are much more aligned with social justice and making sure that we provide opportunity to those who deserve it. Is that a fair assessment? And after all, you are a professor at one of the most recognized schools in public administration in the world, at Princeton. I believe you're teaching at the graduate level, correct? At the School of Public Administration.
Yeah, I'm teaching both at the graduate and the undergraduate level, both Fantastic. Right now. But you're right. It's the impact. I mean, think of climate change. Climate change will have a higher proportion of victims who are poor than those who are wealthy. Why? Because those who are wealthy can actually pack their bags and leave. You and I come from an island. We grew up on an island where a lot of poor people live in the coastal areas. Can they just pack up and leave? No, they cannot. They don't have the means. So anything that happens in terms of coastal erosion, coastal, climate change, rains, hurricanes, it really affects those who have the least. So part of what we have to do is through energy justice is make sure that we build a system that is robust, that is stable, that actually is resilient and can actually afford a better quality of life to those who don't have the means to pay for it themselves. And then at the same time, education. There are kids who have absolutely no way to afford, a private education, no way to afford, opportunities that other kids have. And by just a mere intervention at a local school can actually make a huge difference in the lives of so many kids. And that's part of what I think, we're trying to do, not only in New Jersey, in New York, in everywhere. And it's controversial. There was an editorial in the New York Times about 20 years ago that said anyone who talks about education gets into hot water, and I know that, and it's fine. So if what's that old saying? If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Well, if you want to be in public service, be willing to take the heat, and that's part of the process.
And it's interesting because it's not only taking the heat, but also taking the heat for two goals, whether it's energy and climate or education. Both of those are very long-term goals and aspirations. And typically, and that's unusual of a politician, as you were before, typically politicians are looking at the short term, right? What changes can they implement in the short term that will show results that in turn will help them to be reelected? But I commend you because you chose two of the most difficult areas, certainly in Puerto Rico, one of the two most difficult areas, energía eléctrica, electric energy, and public education system, with that long-term view in mind. So that might allow me to segue into another topic that I wanted to ask you about,
Sure.
Eduardo.
Sure.
And by the way, we have many comments coming in. If you have any particular questions for Professor Bhatia or for myself, please make sure to include it in the comment section, and we'll try our best to address it. But there is a distinction between pursuing a career in politics and pursuing a career in government. They're certainly related. No doubt that they are related, but it might require, depending on again, I'm thinking of the students who might be considering both options, it certainly might require going through a slightly different path. There might be opportunities to pursue or identify whether your career path wants to be in politics or in public administration, government as a career service employee of the government, federal, state, local. So can you tell us a little bit about what is the distinction between those two, and similarities too, but distinctions so that our students can, if they're looking at that option, have a better sense of how and why pursue one versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, a career in politics is a very noble career. People see politicians, and these days politicians don't have a great reputation out there. And yet, in a democracy, every citizen should have a duty to serve your fellow citizens. Not many people do it because of again, the pushback, the insults, the level of political activity in a democracy. Of course, the question is, again, if you want to be the next congressperson, or if you want to be the next governor, and your goal is to be governor, I'm telling you, you're going to fail. If you want to be a leader and an activist, and in order for you to accomplish what you want to do, you have to become governor. They're two different things. I mean, if your goal is to become governor, I mean, you may get it, you may get there, but you after you are elected, then what do? What I'm saying is, choose why is it that you want to run for office. If you're an activist and you realize that in order to accomplish what you have to accomplish, in order to move that agenda forward, in order to bring people together, in order to lead, you have to win an election, and you have to sort of become the mayor of your town, or you have to be on the school board, or you have to be part of a body that is elected. Then go ahead and do it. Go ahead and put your name out there and show people your passion. Don't imitate other leaders that you see and watch on YouTube. Find your own style and make sure you find your own voice, and go tell people your own narrative. Tell me a story. Tell me your story. Tell me why I should be voting for you and why you should represent me. That's in terms of politics. In terms of government, I think it's a different process. In terms of government, even though that same voice has to be there, it's a voice that is less, there's less friction. It's a voice where, you interview for jobs, where you actually go and try to see and work with an agenda that is already established precisely by those politicians, usually, who were elected. and you try to make the job more professional, more serious. I hate to use the word technocrats, but there's a technical aspect
Sure.
about having good governance. And once you're in government, you can add so much value to the job by being a professional, by being competitive, by being finding better ways always to do things.
And to have clear metrics. One thing that sometimes we miss is that governments have to have key performance indicators to see if the goal is being achieved. And sometimes we miss that part.
Measure, measure, always measure, and then take time to understand what the measurement means, and
Right.
then take time to analyze and come up with a strategy, and then make someone responsible for a strategy. That's the process. I think that's a clear process for everyone.
So we have a great question from our friend Dana Montenegro, and Dana is asking.
We should interview Dana. By the way, he knows more about
Absolutely.
he knows more about so many. He and his wife are basically the design thinking
That's right.
teachers, not only in Puerto Rico but elsewhere. And I always commend him and I salute him from here.
So Dana, you heard it from the mouth of former senator, and now Professor Bhatia. You're going to be one of our invitees. And Dana is asking, in what ways can civil servants drive, enable, participate in bringing citizen-centric innovation to public services? Civil servants drive, enable, or participate in bringing citizen-centric innovation to public services. And he adds, considering that politics is short-term, but civic change takes long-term innovation, that is hard. What skills do civil servants need to effectively innovate the public place?
Let me just answer what that. That's a great question, by the way. And civil service per se is a vocation, and it's something that it's either in you or it's not. And if it is, the question is, can you do the long-term civil service career where you actually become an agent of change that, regardless of who wins and who loses elections? Now, the problem is that politicians in many scenarios have killed civil service, because if you're not out there campaigning for them, which is, that should not be the job of civil service.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the civil service at the federal level is prohibited from campaigning.
Right.
And that's the way it should also be in areas like Puerto Rico, and that's something I always try to do. But he's right. If you're a civil servant, you have to put out there a great effort to to innovate, a great effort to make your agency sort of look around and see best practices. You have to make sure that you're inclusive, that you go out there. Not right now, for good governance, you have to reach out to NGOs, non-government organizations that are doing great jobs. You have to see where innovation is taking place in the world and actually bring that into your agency. And hopefully, the good agencies and the good leadership, even political leaders, should embrace that. Now, the problem is that many scenarios, I can tell you, and we have lived through it. And Jorge, and you were a public servant and you were head of an agency. Many scenarios, the good workers become a threat. Unfortunately, there's jealousy. They become a threat. There are political implications. And slowly, we have been eroding what good governance is. And I think part of what the new generation should do is take back the idea that good governance should exist, and we should always protect the good civil servants.
And I think there is an advantage to the younger generation interested in public service that we probably didn't have when we were serving in government, which is the access to information and best practices and innovation worldwide.
Right.
Now we can tap quickly and research innovations on energy, on education, on health, on all sorts of topics that I wish I had handy when we were both serving in government in Puerto Rico, and in my case also at the federal level. So that is very, very encouraging for the upcoming generation. So before we conclude, and we only have a few more minutes left of the interview, I did want to ask you a question that it's a tricky one, but I trust you will be able to manage it. Which is, if you were starting again, Eduardo Bhatia, at 18, graduating from Colegio San Jose and on his way to college, what would you do different, if anything, based versus what you did in terms of following your path in government and in politics?
Um, let me, I mean, this question can take 1 hour, 2 hours, can
Sure.
take a book. But let me just say this. I did some daring things. I did some things that were a little crazy at the beginning. I graduated from law school. I did work for a law firm for about 2 years. But then I was very young. I was only 27, 28 years old when I ran for to be a senator. Nobody knew who I was. Had no chance of winning. There was no way I could win. The reason why I ran for the Puerto Rico Senate was because I thought that the people who were there were not really representing me. My voice was not heard. And I thought we should have a different voice there. And I won. I mean, I was not expecting to win, and I won. And then it was like, oh my God, now I won. So I was, in a way, I was fortunate because of so many factors. So I would say, the one thing I would tell everyone is politics is a very risky business. So I did it because I had a fallback. I could always go back into my profession, into being a lawyer. So I would say, if you want to enter into politics, don't make that your fallback, because politics is very tricky. You can be the best candidate, you can be the best prepared person, you can be the most articulate, you can be the nicest person in the world, and yet you will lose an election. You could lose an election. It happens. So I would say, if I could change something in my life, I don't know. I would have to slowly look into it. But my advice would be to anyone looking into this webcast is, just make sure that if you do enter into politics, you have a fallback position, because more often than not, you may have to use it.
Good. Well, thank you for those very, very illuminating words and recommendations, Eduardo. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
At Princeton. You have an open invitation in New York City to visit us at the School of Professional Studies. Best of luck in your upcoming trip to Puerto Rico. I understand you're going to take one of your classes to Puerto Rico in a week or two.
Indeed, we're doing a great. We're going to study on why Puerto Rico is not moving fast enough towards renewable energy. So we're sort of coordinating with the White House. We're coordinating with the U.S. Department of Energy, and 10 students are going actually down to Puerto Rico. Hopefully, it will be a great trip. I can report later to you. And
Excellent.
Thank you.
So that's a great reason. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
And thank you for your leadership in this wonderful program at CUNY, and my congratulations to you and to all the students who are joining the program.
Thank you so much. And this is a perfect reason to have you back in the series when you come back from Puerto Rico, and maybe we can talk a little bit more in depth about renewable energy in particular, and what is happening not only Puerto Rico, but
one condition. Can we add one or two of the students so that you can hear their voices too? You can hear their voices. I think they can also share their views and their stories and what they expected. They have never been to Puerto Rico, so what they expected, what they saw there, and what their narratives are.
Excellent. We will do that for sure. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.